Evan Drellich joining us. He longtime MLB writer now and has gotten into the book game. The book is Winning Fixes Everything. Subtitle: How Baseball's Brightest Minds Created Sports' Biggest Mess. So it centers around the Astros and the cheating scandal back in 2017. The Astros are a very interesting team to me, and this cheating scandal is very interesting to me because it happened, and then we found out a few years later. And then I remember in 2020, I'm in Milwaukee. So in 2020, the Astros were not scheduled to come to Milwaukee, but they were scheduled to come to Chicago to play the White Sox. And I was going to get a bunch of people down from the radio station and boo the Astros. And it was going to be crazy because we were so upset. But were we upset? I kind of feel like the Astros got away with this. You know, I know that some of the guys in the managerial roles were suspended and stepped down or didn't take jobs. But in terms of the players, they haven't since 2017 when they won, they haven't not made the ALCS minimum any year. They've been to the World Series 3 more times. They won it last year. And it feels like, oh, the Astros did this, they cheated, but it's still not as bad as PEDs. It's still not as bad as, other things. So your response to, I feel like the Astros kind of got away with this.
Yeah, it's one of the things that the commissioner, Rob Manfred, said. When he decides not to punish the players, we can go into why that is. That there is a form of punishment involved with simply the finding, the association with this. I think he's actually partially right, that the fact that this follows people forever, that they do get booed, that people were making plans to go boo them. And then eventually when people are allowed to go back into baseball stadiums, they still do boo them. It's not as though this doesn't exist in these players' lives, that it's like forgotten. But I also understand the argument of, well, they should have gotten XYZ number of games as an actual suspension. And, the commissioner's office was not in a position to punish because they hadn't given notice to the players' union earlier of, hey, if this happens, we're going to punish in a certain way. Why didn't they do that? Because they didn't realize how big the problem was getting, and they didn't realize that if they were in a situation where you had a team-wide cheating scandal, it might look really bad if you don't punish the players directly. And so, I don't think it's totally right that they got off with nothing. I mean, there's definitely an association that these guys are always going to have. But I am empathetic to people saying, well, they should have been formally suspended. And then you arrive at actually an interesting discussion of, well, how do you assign the number of games in a team-wide cheating scandal? Do the hitters get more than the pitchers? Does it matter if you're one of the people who started the scheme? Does it matter if you're a hitter who didn't use the scheme as much as other hitters? What about pitchers who didn't use it, but still benefited from the results? How do you break that down? It's a tricky question that the league didn't have to answer, but maybe someday, maybe another team.
Well, and two, we might not know the extent of the punishment for the players. I mean, that could be a Hall of Fame discussion. And I know that when guys are associated, if they even were like assumed to take PEDs, you're not getting in. I mean, it's been decided you're not getting in. Sorry. I don't know if some of these guys that might be Hall of Fame eligible, and we won't know. We won't know until we see that. But it still seems to me like somebody like Fernando Tatis, right? He had the PED situation. That is going to be a bigger stain than the cheating scandal with the Astros, because it's too, I don't know. I just think in baseball, PEDs is like the line you don't cross. And this, in a way, it's almost kind of like funny and clever what they did.
Yeah, the extension of the previous discussion is, well, how do Hall of Fame voters treat team-wide cheating as compared to individual cheating, right? It's easier with PEDs because, it's an individual thing. So you did it or you didn't do it, or you think somebody did it, and you make your votes that way. But, what a guy like Jose Altuve, who is widely said and understood to not have been a prime user of the banging scheme, the garbage can scheme. There is an anecdote in my book where late in the 2017 season, the Astros are about to go back home, and Altuve is excited that they're going back home because home is where the garbage can system was. And he says, we're going to get back to the boom, 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 makes little noises. And, so he didn't use it, right? But he's still benefiting from it. And based on my reporting, showing some enthusiasm for it. I don't know what's going to happen with the Hall. We saw Carlos Beltran on the ballot this year. Obviously didn't get in on the first try. Maybe he eventually does. Do people hold it over them as a first ballot thing and then later on? But, is individual cheating like necessarily worse than team-wide cheating? I think you can make an argument that a group collectively cheating is worse. But these are all, these are for the philosophers among us. I actually am Hall eligible. I was Hall eligible to vote for the first time this past year. I didn't vote. I don't know that I'm ever going to vote. And I don't, not in the heads of all the other, several hundred voters. But if you were somebody who stood there and said, I don't like these PED people shouldn't get in, then, well, what about when it's a team cheating effort? It's tricky stuff.
Would that preclude you? Like, is that an automatic? I would not vote for them.
You mean if I was voting, would I vote for the Astros?
Yeah.
If I were a voter, I think I would say this in general. I do think the Hall should be looked at as a privilege. And so if people have been shown, I honestly haven't thought about it much in terms of the Astros. I've more thought about it in terms of PEDs. I'm somebody who got into the sport in 1998. When we talk about Bud Selig and steroids bringing people to baseball, I'm literally that person.
Hey, I'm right there with you. Baseball was my first love. In 1994, I was 10. So they go on strike. This is a concept I can't understand. My favorite sport, the players aren't playing for money, but Daddy, this is just a game. I don't get it. So I'm out. I don't watch baseball for 4 years. When do I come back? McGuire South 98. So, hey, take all the PEDs you want. It made the sport cool.
Right. I am not probably, if I were voting, and I reserve the right to change my mind on this. I reserve the right to change my mind on whether I vote at all. And right now I have no plans to vote. I would probably not vote for PED, guys, on the feeling. I think the arguments that, if people aren't in the Hall of Fame, it's a museum, and then the children won't know about baseball. How many people actually visit the Hall of Fame? It's not this notion that, like,
I guess that's a good point. I always say I don't want to go to the Hall of Fame, then go back in my car and then go on Wikipedia and show my kid, well, here's Pete Rose, here's Barry Bonds. But you're right. I will probably never take him to the Hall of Fame.
It's put on a pedestal in so many people's minds as like this thing that really is determinant and matters. It's just my personal definition of the Hall of Fame at the moment, with the right to reserve. And again, I haven't voted, no plan to vote, would be that you're not rewarding bad behavior. That's not something we should be rewarding. But that's me. And, I get the other side of the coin. It's not that I don't intellectually understand the other side of the coin. It's just, that's where I would come down at the moment, but reserving the right to change. So I don't know what I would do with the Astros. In a way, what I'm saying is I want to stay away from it. I think the whole process of me as a reporter putting my name behind somebody else, behind their credibility, I don't know who these people are. I don't know what's going to come out after the fact about any given individual. The Hall of Fame offers really scant guidance on what to do with these situations. So the writers end up just being a shield for the Hall of Fame. I think there's enough reason in this world for people to attack media and reporters anyway. If I'm going to get people yelling at me for me doing my job, I'd rather it be for me doing, actual reporting than, who I voted for or didn't vote for. It's just a sport now. It's just votes come out and then everybody just attacks the writer. Oh, you're an idiot. There's enough of that in the world. So I'm kind of trying to beg off of it because it's not. I don't like anything about this process at all. I really don't. And so let other people figure that out.
Yeah, that's fair. I'm having a coughing attack. I'll edit this out.
That's all right. No, it's good. It's good. People like that.
Oh, actually, I probably won't. I'll probably just keep it in. I don't care. That's kind of my show. Evan Drellich is here again. The book, Winning Fixes Everything. One more thing on the book and the Astros. Then I'll ask you about, where we're at with baseball. It's kind of weird because I'm not sure they needed to cheat. Like, the Astros are good. They're a good team. I just said their accolades. They've been good for so long. Also, I'm one of these guys where I think cheating is there's a thin line between gaining an edge and what's strategy and then cheating. You know what I mean? So I guess we've decided that, using the bang is, but if you figure out the guy's tipping his pitches, like, what's coming. Is that cheating? If you figure out a tell, is that cheating? No. But this seems to have crossed the line. So people are always trying to find ways to game the system and to try to gain advantages. I just wonder how far over the line this was, because when I first found out about it, I thought it was clever. And then everyone decided it was cheating. I'm like, oh, yeah, it's cheating. But I thought it was kind of ingenious, to be honest. I know that's weird to say.
Yeah, I think it's right to say that the line between innovation and cheating can be a little hazy. That there are things we reward as being ingenious. I think in the case of what the Astros were doing, though, when you kind of you spend a tiny bit of time on it.
It also didn't cost my team. Like, they didn't play against my team, so it didn't cost me anything.
It was totally off the field, right? It is like, I remember my reaction. So Ken Rosenthal and I break the story, and then that same day, John Boy puts out video, confirming everything in the story. And there was a clip of Alex Bregman. I think it was like an 0-2 pitch for a curveball. I should go back and watch it because I keep referencing this. But hits a home run. And you hear the bang right before it. And I remember being pretty viscerally moved by that, by like, whoa, like, he knew what was coming. And it goes to the heart of, like, are we watching a competition between people on the field, or is this electronics off the field? And yeah, Bregman still had to connect with the pitch, still actually had to hit the thing. But, I think it really does strike at the heart of competition in sports when you have off the field electronics and this whole setup to influence very directly what's going on the field. So I on one hand, I understand what you're saying about, people are always going to try to get an edge. That is true. There will be more cheating in baseball someday. And there'll be more scandals someday on who knows what topic. But what the Astros were doing is being kind of flagrant and egregious. I certainly see it that way. And I think most people do, in the sport and maybe outside the sport as well.
Now, you mentioned 98, what got you into baseball, but there's also, things I remember about baseball that have kind of been taken away because of the, let's say, analytics. But, you watch some of these at-bats and from the last 5 years, and it looks like when you see the camera on the batter, you're like, oh, I know where that's going. That's going right through the gap. And then you see the field and there's a guy standing perfectly there. And I've always been against the banning of a shift because I like for games to naturally progress. Okay, the defense has figured out what to do, and now it's up to the batters and the offense to figure out how to counter that. Well, baseball doesn't want to do that. They're going to ban the shift. It's kind of weird having this conversation because they're doing a lot at once. So I think they should have, if they're going to ban the shift because they want more action, okay, let's see if that works, and then maybe do this pitch clock thing. Because the pitch clock thing, it's going to make you feel like more action, but the stats I've seen from the minor leagues where it was used, it's still basically the same amount of hits per game. It's still basically the same amount of strikeouts and runs per game. It's just it's going faster. So I'm for more action. I don't necessarily want the games to be shorter. I'm fine with a 3-hour game. I'm fine with a 3.5-hour game, especially if I'm going to the park. Like, we may not go to the Hall of Fame, but I'm going to that baseball park as much as I can. I don't want to get there late. All of a sudden, it's the third inning. I get a chance to buy maybe one beer, and then the game's over in an hour and a half since I got there. So they're throwing a lot at you. And I guess, will baseball in 2023 ultimately be a better product than in 2022?
I don't know that anybody has this answer yet, because for all the testing you can do in the minor leagues, it is a different environment. The commissioner had a press conference in Florida, a couple weeks ago, and I asked, is there a risk here? Is there a risk that these things don't work out? And I actually think, to his credit, acknowledged it. Yeah, no, there is a risk here. That it's not a guarantee that it's going to go perfectly. It is a lot of different things at once. You wonder how the umpires are going to keep up, how the pitch clock keepers are going to keep up. I mean, something's going to go wrong at some point here, right? There's already been some controversy in spring training, and then when the stakes get real in the regular season, something goes wrong, and who knows? Maybe something goes wrong in the postseason, and you have a game end on a violation of some sort, and that's going to annoy a lot of people. I hope these go well, because I do think the product needs to be better. I am myself less interested in the action on the field. I mean, some of this is just the nature of my job function, but some of it is the game just isn't quite as interesting these days when it's, baseball, beautiful, wonderful game that it is, was not a perfectly designed game where, you couldn't game the system, where people couldn't figure out, okay, what is most valuable? Well, if home runs are really most valuable, then swing for the fences, boys, and the strikeouts are fine to go along with that. And so why aren't people beating the shift more? Well, because beating the shift more means giving up going for home runs and doubles. It means I'll take the little opposite field single. And some guys try to do that, but at the end of the day, the chance of you hitting that home run, at least in the eyes of most teams, and maybe mathematically as well, is still more valuable, right? So they're not going to move away from it unless you force them to. So I do think the game needs to be faster. I used to love the sense that I don't know when the game's going to end. The extra innings, and or in the 14th. Whoa, this is wild, and staying hours at the ballpark. I think as now I get older, I don't mind a game maybe having a shot to finish under 3 hours rather than 3.5. I'm hopeful they work. It's not a guarantee all of this works, but I think it's overall good that baseball is trying. In the absolute worst case scenario, what do? You scrap it. You revert back. I'm generally a roll the dice guy with something like this. I think you should try, as long as you've taken the steps to implement properly, and we'll see if MLB did that.
I just kind of feel like baseball. Yeah, I was listening to a basketball game. This just happened the other night. I was listening to a basketball game on the radio, and a commercial came on, and it was Bob Uecker for like sausage or whatever. But it was a younger Uecker. It wasn't, Uecker still sounds great. The voice guy for the Brewers, of course. But it was a younger Uecker. And you can tell the difference in his voice. And it took me back to being younger, and at a time when baseball I don't know. I feel like baseball's in a weird spot where it's always going to be chasing a problem, and we always want it to be what it was when we loved it as kids. So we always want that nostalgia. We always want that innocence, that purity. And then at the same time, if they fix this problem, well, then there's the salary cap issue, and there's how 20 teams aren't very competitive. I also think it's kind of a problem that the playoffs are as big as they are. You play 162 games, and like, credit the Astros, like we've been talking about, it's been ALCS, that's been their minimum. But for like the Brewers, they are just like, we'll just roll the dice. We'll try to get in. Bites of the apple is the catchphrase. And that doesn't motivate them to have the best team. And even if they have the best team, they might have a cold week, and then you're done. You play 162 games, you have a cold weekend, and then you're done. So I feel like baseball it's always going to be trying to chase the future and trying to fix problems, but it's just such a like nostalgic sport that we're also going to be trying to change the past. I don't know if there's a question in there, but I'm sure you have a thought. Or
Yeah, I agree with that. I think as an overall that people will always look back. One of the things that's interesting about baseball consumption, and this is based on the league and some outside studies, but I have no reason to doubt it's true, is that baseball fans typically, it's kind of a U shape for fandom over time. So often people are fans as kids. When they, hit adulthood, early adulthood, maybe have families, professional pursuits, they drift away from the game, and then later in life they come back. And so it lays the groundwork for this cycle of, well, I don't care about baseball as much as I used to. Every generation, as they start to age, and then as they get older, they have more money, maybe they have more time, retire, put on the ball game again, and maybe you get more back into it. So I think that's right, that people are always chasing nostalgia, particularly with baseball. I also think in this case, it is very easy to clearly see that the game has definitively changed, in comparison to the first, many decades of the sport, right? The baseball in the last 10, 15 years, the money ball influence, the big data analytics influence changes the way the game is played, I think, more aggressively or more noticeably aesthetically than had been the case before. Yeah.
But even the skill of the players, like it's almost like we've conquered, like humans have conquered baseball by being able to throw 100, and the timing is better. Like everything's better. Like if you would show guys back in the 1940s what their game would look like in 80 years, they'd be like, well, shit, I can't compete with this.
Right. And I think it's games when they get figured out aren't quite as fun. I remember I used to play a lot of Madden, and in Madden 03, there was a goal line defense you could use. I think it was Madden 03. It was a goal line defense you could use that was basically just a really effective blitz, and you could use it on any play. Then Vic in Madden 04, not to go too deep into an old video game rabbit hole here, but
and then I would always do the play where the running back would angle out and then come in. I mean, my running backs would have 60 catches a game, and I'd win 60-5.
Right. And so it's fun for a bit, but at a certain point, if it takes it's removing some of the mystery and the possibility of something else working, isn't always the best thing for a sport or competition. I mean, the when I was growing up, when you were growing up, guys throwing 99, there was a mystique to that. You hit 100, whoa. Joel Zumaya, Billy Wagner. I mean, you can name the guys who were doing it. It wasn't many people that were hitting 100. And now it's so common, and it almost takes away some of the mystique around it. And the other problem is teams are going through these relievers so quickly. It's this nameless, faceless parade of young guys throwing 100. Entertainment in general, you want a cast of characters that people know storylines with, right? Like back in the day, 20 years ago, maybe not even, starting pitching was a heavyweight billing. It was, Roger Clemens squaring off with, Roy Halladay or Randy Johnson or, Kurt Schilling. Like, whoa. And now it's, 4 or 5 innings, everybody's max effort. It's the parade of people, you don't get to know these people as well. And I think it just becomes a little bit less compelling a product overall. That's my feeling, but somebody could disagree with me. They'd be wrong, but they could disagree with me.
That's my line. I like that. Evan Drellich, again, the book is Winning Fixes Everything, How Baseball's Brightest Minds Created Sport's Biggest Mess. Now with The Athletic, of course, so do read his work there. Evan, good to talk to you. A good conversation. Always fun to talk baseball. And continue your efforts on the book tour, and appreciate your time.
Thanks, Bart. Appreciate it.